buttons to ensure that we don't get too much interference. It can be fantastic when we really want a discussion, and we'll have some discussion as we go, but just to get us going and also to stop private conversations getting overheard, Kath here at CRA has muted the mics of you all. You can do something about that. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So welcome. Give us a few minutes, literally 2 minutes, I think, till past, and then we'll get underway. Hello, Chris. Good to have you join us. Kath and Helen, that's great. We will, as I say, kick off in a minute, and we'll be back with you then. Thanks a lot. Okay. So ready, Kath? Okay. Hi, Helen, and John. Great to see some writing already in the chat box. It is about past, so we'll kick off if that's okay with colleagues. We're doing it this as a bit of a sort of collaborative effort. So I hope you can hear me okay. If you can't and you want to, just write something in the chat box. I'll put my camera on. Greetings from fantastic Wigan. I'll take the camera off at some point, I think, just to do a bit of an introduction. I think the nice thing about this, and I mean that sincerely, is we've got a relatively focused number of folks, which is great. There are about 10 of us, I think, including Kath and myself, on the call, and we'll be joined virtually by Paul Jackson, who colleagues will know most recently because he was chair of our board of trustees and also worked at the University of Leeds and at Leicester latterly, and actually is the link to the alumni survey that we're going to talk a little bit about today. Just to give you a context for that, this came about because the original intention was to include it as part of the residential seminar program, but other things ran over and it got squeezed out. So we're going to present it to you now. Hi, Sue. What we want to do is to provide an opportunity for people to think about how they want to, or whether they want to, make use of this as a resource, bring it up to date, and perhaps use part of it as the basis for some action research in your own patch. So that's our purpose. Kath, if you can add the slides into the picture, so we have the first slide, that would be good. This is where our various workarounds, we'll see if they do actually work. Hi, Sue, we can see you now.
I know, I just realised I could see you, so I thought I might as well join the party.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Okay, Kath is moving from machine to machine. We've had some problems with the slides in presentations recently, which we're trying to find a workaround, so I apologise for that if it's less than Less than seamless. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Fantastic. So off we go. So welcome to all of you. What I suggest we do is I will just very quickly, if I can, and I think I can unmute your mics. What we normally do is to keep the microphones on mute, because a lot of background noise in offices gets transmitted. Not everybody has a mic, including Chris. We'll just give you a chance to say who you are, so people know who's around, and what, if anything, you want from this session. You can either speak in a minute or just type stuff in the chat box. That will be fine. And if nobody says anything, I'll gather that you're all lurkers, and I'll just bat on regardless. Kath, can you unmute the mics just for a couple of minutes? Okay, fantastic. So if anybody wants to speak, now's your first opportunity, just to say where you're from and whether you've got particular interests in terms of the plan we've got in front of us on the slide at the minute.
Hello, I'm Kath Dunn. I'm Head of Careers and Employability at Bucks-New University, and Alumni sits within our Careers and Employability team.
Right, thanks, Kath. And you actually made a point of saying to me you'd be interested in this at the residential, I remember, so that's great.
That's right, yes. Nice to see you again, Rob.
And you too.
Hi, this is Chris Wilson. I'm at the University of Derby, and as Senior Lead for Learning Enhancement, I've got a quite general interest in the whole process. Nothing specific at the moment, but I'm sure that'll come.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks very much, Chris. And Helen's put a note in the chat box, you'll see, about how we can use alumni to inform future actions, and that, I think, is very much the question that we have in relation to this tool, which we'll come to in a minute. Anybody else want to put in a two-penneth?
Just as having recently, Sue Riddle for Canterbury Christchurch University, having recently taken on the role of Head of Student Engagement, is much the same as looking at how we might engage our alumni in order to support various agendas within the university.
Fantastic, thanks Sue. That's really helpful. And I think, Chris, okay. Alumni mentoring, okay, fantastic. Thanks, Chris. Yes, I mean, given all the...
John Jackson from Bangor as well.
Hi, John.
Hi, yeah, similarly to the previous two, I think, looking to alumni to help us with our workshop program, so career management stuff and also skills development stuff as well.
Okay, brilliant. Yes, I mean, making use of your alumni is important. I think Paul will say a bit about his experience of that in a minute. Paul is with us virtually because he couldn't get time out today to join us. So what we've done is recorded his contribution about his experience of using the original questionnaire at Leeds. Okay, fantastic. Anybody else want to put in their two-penneth at this stage? Silence will be taken as no. Okay, what I'm going to ask Kath to do then is just to mute the mics for a little while. We'll run through half a dozen, perhaps a few more slides, and then we'll open it for discussion about whether there's anything in here that people want to take forwards in terms of individual work, or more interestingly from our point of view, clearly, any kind of collaborative work. So what we're going to do is, as you'll see from the slide on the screen, is to review a version of the questionnaire that we've taken from the original paper-based document and created in an electronic format. And we can create versions of this questionnaire to your specification if that's what you're interested in having. Then we'll have Paul's virtual contribution through the ether about how he used the questionnaire at Leeds with departments to gather feedback on how particularly students saw the degree in hindsight as giving them the kinds of capabilities they needed for their early career. And then have a little look at the detail of that, and as I've said, we can create versions if people are interested in using versions, and if it's appropriate, and it may well not be because it will rely on institutional systems, I suspect, just to talk about issues of ethical clearance if there are any. So that's the context. I'm going to run through the slides, which I think will take us about 15 to 20 minutes top whack. And then I'm going to unmute everybody's mic and people can talk about whether there's anything in this for you and whether you're interested in taking it forwards beyond today. And if not, you've at least had a convivial lunchtime session. Kath, can you move us to the next slide then? Okay. Just to give you a context for the questionnaire, which was originally in paper form and is now quite elderly in that form, so there might be some elements within it that we're having to look at updating anyway. We've located it and we've given you a link there, and we'll send you the slides so you can access the questionnaire yourself after this session. It's really, I think, as Paul will say, quite a long questionnaire, and maybe we want to see it not as in its entirety, but as a bank of questions people might consider making use of, and we can chunk it up for that purpose. The organisation that developed it, no longer in existence, was Cherry, based at the Open University, but if you Google their publications record, you'll find they did a huge amount of work for the HE sector, often around employability, and indeed including some work on progress files and PDP implementation. They produced a report on that, an interim report which is not unhelpful in 2003, written by John Brennan and Tala Shah. And the questionnaire, as I said, covers a great range of material. It talks about the pre-entry phase, it talks about looking back from the alumni, the current role of the relevant alumnus, and ways in which in hindsight the degree facilitated their development. We've got one or two screenshots that I hope will come out okay, just to give you a flavour of some of the question areas in the current electronic model. So there's a bit of information quite early on, which is in a sense locational information about the course and so on. There's a bit also about what influenced people's choices, and then we get onto this slide 4A, which is around career strategy, about what people feel is important to them in terms of developing their career. And bear in mind, and Paul will talk about this in a minute, that actually this was targeted at individual departments in an institution. It's not like the Delhi survey, which is done centrally. There was a kind of negotiation at Leeds, certainly, with individual departments that wanted to get some feedback from their alumni, which was different from the how are you doing, have you got any money to spare kind of questions that sometimes it's suggested is the primary focus of writing to alumni. So there are some questions here about the graduate's career strategy, and clearly just at the bottom of the page you can see that we get into some statements about long-term career plans, which again are potentially useful information. Then there's quite a big section with a number of questions about the degree and the way the degree prepared students for their futures. And those are generic, so section 12, question 12 and I think question 13 around this kind of territory. Sorry, question 11 and question 12. Then there's a rather odd question, which you'll just see at the bottom of that slide, which we'll probably pass over, which is really about feedback, about generic feedback about the institution, which I can't see would necessarily feature strongly in a departmental focused piece of work. And then beyond that, there's, so if you could move that one on, Kath, that would be good. There are issues about how the degree contributed. So as you go through the questionnaire in this section, we find that there are a number of sections. They deal with different aspects of what they call skills, general skills, specific skills. We might want to think about the language there, but there are some categories which encourage students to think about what skills they're using and how their degree helped them to develop those capabilities. It moves through, we haven't got a lot more, but there are other sections which we're going to have a look at later on. I just wanted to give you a flavour. So it's a questionnaire, it's a press the button and you get, in the electronic version, you get the responses entered. Those can be saved and they can be collated. So what did they do all those years back at Leeds? Over to Paul, seamlessly hopefully, and he'll tell us. Kath, I haven't got any sound on that. Or he may not tell us. I'll never say seamless again. Just hang on a minute.
Can you hear sound on it from mine? Right.
Hi folks, can I just check that you're getting Paul's sound, because I'm not getting Paul's sound. I know what it is. Just type in the chat box if you can't hear Paul. If you can, that's fine. No, okay. It's on Kath's screen, but for some reason not on anybody else's, so we'll have to just reprise this bit. Just hang on a minute and we'll try and sort something out. Sorry about that. I'll never say seamlessly again.
Let me just try something else.
Okay. If not, we'll have to, I'll have to do the commentary. Okay, we're going to have another go at it, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to be Paul for a minute or two, and when we put the whole presentation up, you'll be able to hear the whole thing, hopefully. I don't think it is. No, we can't hear him, Kath. Okay. Kath, if you can put the PowerPoint back up, I'll talk to it, I think, would be best. And then we'll put it up, hopefully with the presentation included. So if we just go to Paul's slides, here we go. Try to get... Okay. I think reprising what Paul's slides are all about, and we're going to be all about, we're really going to talk. He's done some work in this both at Leeds and Leicester, but the Leeds work is possibly the more interesting to us because it's around work with departments and maybe curriculum development. So at the University of Leeds, a range of departments took part, and they were quite varied. I think from memory included music, included physics, included business studies, and it was negotiated with departments as to how they were going to make use of the questionnaire. So I think the model was kind of institutional or departmental consultancy from, in this case, the career service. The career service took on the job of helping departments understand the experience or the hindsight perceptions of their alumni looking back into the experience of being students in those departments. Can we have the next slide then, Kath? If that will work. Maybe we have to wait for Paul officially to get to the end of his speech that we can't hear. Okay, thanks. As we've said, the questionnaire has got a range of elements within it. There's some issues about decisions, the current employment they're involved with, which might overlap with the Delhi work and might not be relevant now in this kind of context. And then we've got some elements about the extent to which their degree program developed and enhanced the skills that they're required to use in their current working context. And the aim there, I think, was very much to give feedback to departments on what aspects of curriculum content possibly, but certainly the pedagogies used within the department have contributed to the ability of those employees to work effectively in their current roles. We now may have a little wait for the next slide because of the difficulties we've got, and I apologise for that.
Included music, business studies, and physics, and a variety of other departments. The approach was by questionnaire. It was a very detailed questionnaire. The questionnaire covered decisions related to the choice of study and the career plans at university, but specifically what was their current employment and skills required in the workplace. But more importantly, we were trying to link up to the extent of the degree program that developed these skills. The returns surprised us quite a lot. First of all, they were very, very high. The numbers of returns were much...
Okay, we've now got Paul, and we're going to start that bit, because he can do a better job than me. We'll just go back to the start and see if we can get all of him to the system.
Institutions claim me as their alumni. All I ever seem to receive, however, are requests for money. Little do they know me. But I think and I believe that the alumni hold a whole potential amount of information, that if we ask the right questions, we possibly could actually mine that information and make use of it in services and also in curriculum. I want to talk to you today about a couple of experiences I've had in terms of surveying the alumni and maybe picking up on some of those ideas later. The first one was whilst I was at Leeds, where we undertook a survey of the alumni. The aim was to assist in curriculum design. A range of departments included music, business studies, and physics, and a variety of other departments. The approach was by questionnaire. It was a very detailed questionnaire. The questionnaire covered decisions related to the choice of study and the career plans at university. But specifically what we were interested in was their current employment and the skills required in the workplace. But more importantly, we tried to link up with the extent to which their degree program had developed and enhanced those skills. The returns surprised us quite a lot. First of all, they were very, very high. The numbers of returns were much greater than we expected. Not least, I think, because it was the head of department who contacted the student or graduate, and it wasn't the university. So I think there was a personal connection there, which meant that people actually responded to what was a very long questionnaire. The two things that came out of the survey were that the graduates really appreciated the opportunity to work in teams and also to develop those soft skills. The data was rich and had potentially significant issues for us to pick up on. Of course, it had its issues in that some of it was related to individual stories, so you can't necessarily generalize those. Similarly, obviously, the graduates are talking in hindsight. One issue that struck us greatly was that the curriculum was changing and still was changing. Nevertheless, it did endorse what we were trying to do in terms of developing soft skills, employability skills within the curriculum. What next? Well, I think there's real value in finding something about the reality of the alumni experience, and in terms of learning from the alumni at our institutions. We have a really detailed questionnaire which is focused on curriculum development. We would like to use that as a starting point, either to adapt or adopt or to change and develop it to make use of it in the future. Perhaps you're interested too. If so, what we'd like to do is we'd like to take that interest and see if we can't take this further. Certainly, there's the potential there, both for curriculum development and service development. Thank you.
Fantastic. We got there in the end. I do apologise for that. And at this point we're going to unmute the mics, but just to reprise what Paul was saying towards the end of that, we've got a bank of questions. We've got this opportunity to make use of the this bank of questions, perhaps with some updating, and just to re-emphasise, if people are interested in doing something, perhaps with an interested department in your institution as a test case, an enthusiastic department maybe, bearing in mind Paul's comments about the high level of return, because it was perceived to come from the department was making the inquiry, then we can make a version of this questionnaire available to you to customise, and we've got the facility to collate the results if you want us to. Absolutely, Kath, yes. I think it's exactly that kind of model that we're thinking about, and obviously we'd be delighted if people wanted to take this opportunity on, and it would be smashing if people felt able to share the results, which might be the results of the process of doing it, which in a sense was what Paul shared, how it worked, and maybe some things they'd want to change next time. But I think the first thing is just having presented it to you, to give you the opportunity to talk together or to think together about whether this might be useful. We can look at the detail of the questionnaire if you want to again, or not, or you can go away and have a think about it. So we've unmuted the mics. Some people are chatting because that's the method that works best, often in a shared space. Kath saying yes, want to link with the academic enhancement colleagues to work jointly with departments, and Mark thinking about working with the careers department. And I think there's some areas things is quite important there, because this is not this is something I suspect that people might want to try and see what happens, and to develop to make it more useful, given that it was developed over a decade ago on paper. And I think it looks at leading edge technology as something like email. So over to you in terms of thinking. Yeah, Helen, need to get some colleagues on board, so that might be a question then of starting out by having a look at the questionnaire itself. Do people want to comment on what they've seen or what we've suggested? Yes, okay. Yes, exactly, it's got to fit in. So a number of points being made. Chris there saying in a sense that we need to think about how it fits with other things, and I've made a clear distinction about need to separate it out from the deli. But it can be done in that kind of way, because this is not a yeah, okay, come back to that in a second, Kath. Yes, I mean, because the deli is being done for a particular purpose and is normally done in quite direct ways, this is done in a sense in a relatively independent way. We can provide it for people. I think the feedback from Paul suggested having a strong departmental badge would perhaps, his experience, up the response rates, providing it electronically and then collating what comes back. Yeah. Death by survey, yes, absolutely. Okay, a couple of questions there that I want to pick up, so I'll just work down those. Kath saying, what about the inclusionary resilience? It's a good question, and I think it's one of the issues about how the questionnaire might need to be developed, and I'm not sure it is there. And we might find that some aspects of the questionnaire need some further work, but that would be interesting in itself because it would give us an indication of how far work on employability from Cherry has moved on in that period of time. I think that's an interesting question. I think mostly, if we're talking, Helen, about the time of year there, I think it's a question that has some local resonance as well. I think this questionnaire was given not to graduates in their first year of employment. Though people might want to think about it for that, that's tending to be when the DELI is launched upon an unsuspecting graduate population. The NSS, of course, is for existing students, so this tends to be perhaps a couple of years down the line. It was used that way at Leeds. People are perhaps 18 months into their career, so it doesn't hopefully coexist or cut across the DELI and the or the NSS. Death by survey, absolutely. So that also links to questions around how does it fit in with other things and might it need to be integrated. I think the purpose for this, and clearly we've moved on lots in terms of surveying students and graduates since this was developed, is actually to get some feedback that will inform academic colleagues' understanding of the contribution of the curriculum to the employment potential and experience of their graduates. The results, in terms of what Chris's question, and appreciate the problems about the sound, the students, I think that's a question for, well, it's several bits in that. The alumni, as I understood it, didn't see the results, but there's no reason why they shouldn't. Students in the department currently, I guess, might see the results if in an anonymised form, which is how they'd come in, if the department chose to share it with them. And I could envisage that there could be some discussion in the department about what the results mean in terms of the curriculum shape, content and pedagogy now, bearing in mind that it's 18 months since these graduates left. Okay, well I think the survey should be there, but I'll make sure the link works okay, Mark. And as I say, 18 months I think was the period. Absolutely, Kath, yes, I think that's the notion. The time delay is really quite important. There's a downside to that, of course, that people might say, well, the curriculum has changed massively since those were graduates and indeed undergraduates, but I think it's quite important. Kath looks like she's going to load up the survey. Well, maybe just so it should work. If there's a problem, perhaps it's a temporary one. Yep. Yeah, okay, interesting, John, that's a good thought, yeah. Yeah, benchmarking data, the question of where we might get that data from. I think it's a question in that context, Mark, of how we're going to use the data. Whether it's going to be used as kind of definitive data or is it going to be used as a catalyst for considering what people are saying. Some of these questions, as Paul said, particularly towards the end, are very much kind of holistic questions, if you like. Kath's just working through it in a fairly speedy way at present, but you'll see the questions about questions 16 to 20 about skills, how important they are in your job, and then there's always a B question, which is degree program enhancement. Did the degree help you to develop these capabilities? Kath raised the issue of resilience, and whether that's listed, I don't think it is explicitly, and it may be needed to. Okay. And then towards the end there are some questions about just wait for Kath to put it about the individual, which you may or may not want. And what people do next, and then right at the end 28, I think, a really interesting set of questions about skills and so on that people have developed. Don't know why question 25 D follows question 28C, but that's something we'd have to iron out. So, just to return to the questions that people are asking, and then, as I say, you may want to make some comments or have a look at the questionnaire, and we'll schedule a follow-up discussion. How does my department rate against others? Interesting. Yes. I mean, we may be able to do some of that if we do something comparatively, but on a strictly anonymised basis. The appropriateness of graduate attributes is a good one. There's no reason, I guess, why we shouldn't convert the focus of the questions as they are at present around management and so on, personal skills, to have a focus on what an institution is interested in terms of graduate attributes, if they were in existence at the time the students were there. Okay. Okay, Chris, thanks for that. Yeah. So again, we've got the issue of this graduate survey, which is students are able to access. It's a question of how this fits with that or doesn't fit with that. Okay, so as I indicated, this is not going to take an hour, and it's taken about 35 minutes with all the glitches. I think we wanted initially to make sure that people had the opportunity to okay, lots more stuff, I'll come back to have the opportunity to look at this and to think, is there something here that people might want to use in some way? It would be great if people were interested in collaborating across institutions, but I think if we've done nothing more than catalyse your interests, then we've at least completed the full programme of the residential for those that wanted this particular element within it. Just picking up those questions. Yep, you can provide baseline data for the graduate attributes, absolutely. And yes, if depending on which questions you want to keep in, Kath, you could actually look at the cohort through a number of different lenses. One of those is disability. Okay. What people might want to do then as a consequence of this is to have a little look through the detail of the current questionnaire and think about how it might or might not apply to your context now, and whether, as we started out, it might be useful to yep, absolutely, thanks Sue. Yes, so the healthcare option about, are people meeting the demands of the job? Again, some customization might be necessary in terms of the demands of the job, so we might use different categories. We're talking really about customizing to make it fit for purpose for particular programs, for the current context, and that, as I said, does go back to this being as a bank of questions which we can have some jumping off points. Maybe what we can do, if it sounds okay, is to ensure the links to the existing questionnaire work and give you a chance to have a look at it and see whether any of it could add value to the work that you would be interested in doing, which, as I said, is around, in a sense, departmental appreciation of the impact of their programs of study on graduates' ability to develop effectively in the workplace, and what the demands of the workplace are, and the interface between those and the program as it was. So there might be a number of ways of using this as a bank of material, and maybe what we could do is simply to drop each of you a note in a couple of weeks and say, have you got any further thoughts? Because I think that way we won't be demanding things, but we'll at least give you the chance to revisit it. And there's nothing more annoying than having an idea and then having to put it down because the pressure of work crowds in. Thanks very much, Chris. I mean, there is a follow-up. There is a 3-year Delhi follow-up, but it's so small as to not being very helpful. Okay, fine. So we know where you will live. We'll drop you a note in a little while, and if you have an interest in developing a customized version of the questionnaire, then we've got access to that, and Sam and Kath in particular can help that to be available to you. There's no cost involved in using the system that we're using. You might want to export it to another system, but it'd be great to have people take it on and just see what we make of it, and what the opportunities and the potential is to reinforce the connections for academic colleagues with what they do and what graduates do, and how the programs that they run really prepare their students for careers in quite diverse contexts. So I think that's great. It's good to get some endorsement of the possibility it will be in touch in a couple of weeks. So that may simply reflect your desire to get away now without signing up to anything, which would be entirely understandable. So thank you for your time and your interest. If there are any other questions, we'll stay around for a bit for people that want to continue. But actually, on the bright side, in terms of productivity, you get 21 minutes back of your lunch times. And I'll pass on your thanks to Paul, who is probably doing something quite horrible in an educational context at this very moment. Thanks to everyone, and speak to many of you in a couple of weeks, if not before.